Between Two Wheels rides again.
Episode number 3, folks. Fat bikes.
Fat bikes. And other bikes with studded tires.
Are they needed, fat bikes? Or do you just need studs? That's the topic today.
That's the topic. We're trying to get to the bottom of this. It's a pretty hot topic, actually, when you get talking to certain people.
Yeah, people get pretty riled about it, actually.
I was a little surprised that when I did a little bit of off-book prep, people had strong views.
I had exceedingly strong views. A friend of the store, Brett, tried to get me into fat biking in 2011. And I thought he was the biggest idiot ever. And I was very not into it. And then I think most of that had to do, though, with those Surleys back then were contraptions. They weren't real bicycles.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when you started to kind of get excited about it, and I thought you'd lost your mind.
And that was more like 2013 when real bikes came out. So that was like when that Muckluck came out from Salsa, and we started carrying Salsa. And there were actually, like, the bikes shifted and they stopped, and the wheels stayed in them. The tires stayed full of air. So I was like, oh, this is actually fun. It's not just like some weird thing that's not a bicycle in the snow. And
the tires got wide. Like, for me, I remember thinking that when the tires started to get wider and the back end spacing of the bikes got wide enough that there wasn't like strange asymmetrical stuff happening. And also when the front derailleur went away on them, that was like, I thought that was the best thing that ever happened to those bikes.
Oh, totally.
By
it
far.
Made a huge difference, yeah.
So.
Yeah. Single chainring thing was a big deal. But yeah, I can remember, like, we were just looking at photos before this, and so November 3rd, 2013. So.
Oh, you did find it in the end?
Yeah, it was like basically it was a staff ride. There was a bunch of us went out on gold mucklucks.
Yeah.
And it was torture because there was no trail packing and all that stuff. And I can remember we did maybe 4 kilometers, and we had sweat through everything we had on.
We rode up Boundary Ridge with Coons. You and I and Coons, or at least one of the rides we did.
Yeah, I think that was that same week. The photos I got were us going up Bragging Rights.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it was, the intersection on top of Bragging, we're all parked there, just looked like red tomatoes because we're cooked because the snow was like this deep.
I could not believe how devastated I was. That ride that you and I did with Dave.
Yeah.
And snow wasn't super deep, but it wasn't really like, there was no like trail per se. And I admit to eating my words because the bikes were way better than I thought they would be. But boy, oh boy, I was punished.
I don't think we quite get how good, like, within our kind of like Calgary ecosystem, we have it between the grooming at West Bragg, and the grooming at Canmore,
Moose,
and Moose, and then if you're going out all the way to Fernie, like those guys have like an epic trail network.
Yeah.
So it's like
we definitely have to tip our hats to the trail maintainers of this region because the stuff's so good compared to some of the spots that I've talked to people about for sure.
And you and I would go to trade shows and be like, this fat bike category is stupid, and we're like, man, we're doing zillions of these. Like when Q was talking about at the old shop when we first got into those mucklucks, like we were building up between 5 and a dozen a day because it was just so much uptake.
Well, I mean, I remember at the original South store, that was probably the first time ever in like late November where we actually had like we weren't just sitting there hoping to be hit by an asteroid, because it was like not only were indoor trainers finally doing something, but fat bikes actually were a thing. Like
it was super busy.
They were on fire.
Those first couple of years were insane. And that next year, 14, was really the mayhem.
That was the whaler.
Yeah, because that's when the Bear Grease came out. So you need an actual cool carbon fat bike, and it was.
That first Bear Grease I had, I part of me kind of wishes I still had that bike.
It was so good.
That was a cool bike.
It was so good.
Yeah. Super cool and super light too compared to some of the stuff that existed.
It was ridiculous, yeah.
I think our bikes weren't our bikes like low 30s?
Sub 30.
Yours was sub 30.
I had a sub 30.
Yeah, mine was like right on the money, 30, I think.
Yeah.
And I thought that blew my mind.
Yeah. And it's pretty interesting too, as you think back to the start of it, like it was obviously Surly, and then it was Salsa, and then the big dogs kind of came in, basically like your Norco and your Trek and Specialized hit it hard.
Yep.
And
Rocky,
yeah. And then it's really like shrunk, like the offerings went really wide, and now they've kind of really come back. Everyone kind of carries 1 or 2 different bikes.
Yeah.
Because the bikes last forever.
They are remarkable that way. Like unless you use the bike all year, which some people do for sure, or you use it as a commuter bike, they age almost like road bikes.
Totally.
It's kind of crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty neat. You wear out chain rings, if you're, like front chain rings, if you ride lots, because they
Yep.
usually put a little ringer on there. But
Yeah.
I know it's interesting.
Brake pads maybe get a little burned off as well because you slow down more.
Yeah, we've definitely seen in the last couple of years people trying to get bikes that are like you said, multi-purpose to commute.
Yeah.
So we're definitely seeing more fat studded tires go on regular mountain bikes.
Yeah.
Than I thought we would. I kind of thought, I'm such a fat bike fan, I thought that stuff would go hard forever, but it definitely seems it's kind of like picked its lane and it's kind of motoring along, but it's not like mayhem like it used to be for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, like if I go out and the conditions are bony, I had a couple winters there where I didn't have a fat bike and I was riding my regular bike, conditions permitting, because I'm trying to be mindful of the trails, but like riding with like 3-inch wide studded tires on my Bullet, or on what was that bike I had for a bit there, that Stash from Trek.
Yep.
And those bikes were incredible, like with those modern tires.
Yeah, I have a studded Chameleon, like one of those old.
Yeah, the studded Chameleon.
The carbon, that
that's
root
pretty.
beer carbon bike.
I completely forgot about that. Yeah, I forgot we did the big Chameleon missions there for a while.
Yeah, it's fun, but it's like you got to be really mindful that it's chinooked and frozen, and you're not cutting the trail up.
You can't cut the trail. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and obviously certain places don't care, but like, man, like nothing bums me out more than being out West Bragg and there's been
it's just hacked up,
a huge trench where someone's just tried to, do a bunch of sweet grooming and it's too soft. And
I almost took a turn against the fat bike there for a bit, because I started riding the Chameleon and a couple of those other bikes. I was kind of like, oh, this is great, because I'm back on my mountain bike, and the handling is all like what you want.
Yeah.
But then you kind of get onto some of the modern fat bikes now, and they have like more contemporary geometry, and
they're way better. Yeah.
The tires are awesome, and the suspension options are pretty decent. And they do, like, if the conditions are right, I'd still think nothing touches a fat bike.
Oh, totally.
But I can totally see where the rise of winter riding has kind of come about a bit with these other tires, no doubt.
Well, it just means for lots of guys, it just means they need to buy a set of tires instead of a whole bike. Yeah. I'll never not be able to get away without having a fat bike though. Like for me, it's just so much fun, that low pressure.
Yeah.
You don't need to have, like, it doesn't need to be perfectly groomed. It's definitely a bit more on the fitness end of things than it is on the radical end of things. But it's like, it's a great way to get out and have fun. Like, for me, it's like, I hate November. Like, I hate November because it's just always shitty shoulder season.
Yep.
And like the fat bike thing kind of saved November in the sense.
Yeah.
10 years ago, actually, there's something to do in the winter that was
you
fun.
could actually. Well, like I largely abandoned like indoor cycling 8 or 9 years ago, because I was just like, well, I'll just ride all winter now. Like, not only are the bike options awesome, tire options are awesome, clothing options like warm boots and all that stuff kind of came around. And
you weren't just using Nordic ski gear by year 5. So like by 2018, there were so many options.
You could actually go out and do a day and not be frozen solid or hating life.
Yeah, our biggest issue here now is just that it seems like the last couple of years is just snow.
Yeah,
like getting a consistent amount of snow to keep the trails like perfect. Because it seems like it's either bony or it's icy or it's those perfect days are unreal now. It's almost like a good powder day on a ski.
Yeah, if you get primo trails, it is phenomenal. And I, like we were talking about before we started shooting, like I got to remind myself sometimes to actually be willing to go a little deeper into the hills where there is more snow, as opposed to the stuff that's sub 1 hour away. And usually if you're on a time crunch, it's like, I'll just go to West Bragg or Moose and try and get something in. But if you get out to like Fernie or Canmore's crushing it right now, like
there's some the trail above Canmore.
Or Highline,
yeah.
And that's fat bike territory. Like,
oh, it's awesome.
If you go there where there was good snow, you need a fat bike.
Yeah.
So I sometimes just got to remind myself to be willing to set aside the time to a deeper adventure.
I was like a little surprised when we got back. Some of the Q gave us this for
the sort of feedback.
The polls, and it was interesting. The one Instagram poll said 62% say MTB is fine and 38% say fat bike. And I'm obviously in my own head a lot. Like, I'm such a fat bike geek that I can't believe that.
I'm surprised a little bit that it's that.
I thought it'd been way more fat bike.
Real. I could get it though. Like, modern bikes, modern tires, you can do almost anything if the conditions are kind of arid. But if we get any type of snowfall, it's all fat bike for me.
Yeah, it's pretty funny too. Like, Ange on Facebook's like, Rothschild's on my 2.9er MTB is crazy fun.
I told her to do that.
That's awesome. It's so good.
She believed me.
And then like
I'm taking full credit.
was this Creed run said my fat bike rides faster than my summer bike, and
Yeah.
I get it, man. Like people like definitely scoff at people riding fat bikes in the summer.
Totally.
But when I had that lightweight carbon suspension forked Bear Grease, that Sunset one,
Yep.
I put a set of like lighter weight tires on it. The thing was, again, sub 30 pounds, and you could run crazy low pressure. And it was fun, actually. Like, it was a great mud bike. Like, if you didn't want to destroy your your high-end mountain bike.
Full moon lap bike.
Yeah, just gotta go zip around and have a good time.
Yep.
Fun for ripping around with the kid or whatever. But it's like, I get it. Like, it's not like I'd want to ride that my whole life. But it was like, it was definitely a fun way to do it.
I mean, my E-Fat bike, we have a lot of customers at the South Store that ride those all year. And I was like, I should check this thing out in the summertime. And it's not like I'm going to give up my regular summer bike by any stretch of the imagination. That bike's a riot, like at all times. You just got to have the right tires on it.
Totally. So, yeah, I think it's something you can't emphasize enough that, like, with all the Chinooks that we get in Alberta, like, if you don't have studs on your bike, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah. I think even if the snow falls primo, and you know underneath that there's something lurking that's just waiting to claim your collarbone.
Oh yeah, and the studs are always worth the collarbone break.
Oh yeah, no, this like I even on my commuter bikes and stuff. Like I ride my fat bike to and from work a bit in the wintertime. Like there's times where it feels like you're burning out your studs a bit, but I'd rather go through a tire here and there than be constantly either on pins and needles or upside down on my head.
If you're not commuting and you got studs on your bike for fat biking, like I got that Nate that I put screws into.
Yep, like same here.
The thing's 8 years old.
Yeah,
it's like it's fine.
Yeah,
which is like,
I think that's a good point. Like I've got studded tires on my one fat bike, or on my current fat bike rather. I don't know, they got 800 or 900 kilometers on them. They don't even look like they've ever been used. Like, and they have been ridden to and from work a bit, so they're aging. That's a 7-year tire at that rate, unless you have a mishap. So
here's a funny one. So like I'm thinking back, like so I had a Muckluck, then I had a Bear Grease, then I had another Bear Grease.
Yeah.
And then I had, what was the name of the salsa suspension bike?
You had a Bucksaw.
I had a Bucksaw.
Yeah.
And then I had a Farley.
Yep.
Like full suspension. And then and in there I had an Otso. Which is, you got to give a shout out to those guys. That's probably like one of the coolest fat bikes out there.
It's so rad. We have the one here, yeah.
We got that one Otso XT here. That's like easily one of the, like if you're buying a bike, like that's a bike you could ride in the summer.
Oh yeah.
You buy some 2.9 wheels for it in the summer.
Somebody should come and get that. That's like one of the coolest bikes in the building.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And then now I have like a Norco. I have one of the older carbon ones.
Bigfoot.
No,
was it called a Bigfoot?
Ithaca.
It's an Ithaca, yeah, that's right.
So I've had like a zillion different fat bikes, and like even for me, like if you were telling someone to buy a fat bike, I'd say it's got to be like a hardtail's fine, but you got to have a suspension fork.
Yeah. I went a long time without the suspension fork. Mind you, those were winters where the snow was filling in the gaps and stuff more, and I didn't think it would be that big of a deal. And then I put one on a Farley, and right away I was like, yeah, I get it. And then nowadays, I don't think I would be without it. Like, there's just so much sort of variance in the trails, and the coverage is maybe not as good. So you don't get the magic carpet ride as much.
There's days where like you look at your Garmin and you did a Merlin lap in the same time as you would in the summer.
Yep.
And you got a dropper post and a suspension fork, and if the snow's got the bumps filled in, it's just a party.
And you voyage over to the Moose side there, like riding those trails with a rigid fat bike fork you'll feel it.
Oh yeah, these little old wrists won't take it.
Yeah. The arthritis gets right on top of me.
Yep.
Sets in on minute 5.
Yeah, it's no good.
Instantaneous arthritis.
Yeah, I definitely say the majority of the guys that are buying fat bikes from us are riding them in West Bragg and
Canmore. It seems like West Bragg, Canmore, and a lot of Fernie, Fernie crew.
Well, Fernie definitely gets big props for like how good they're grooming it. They get the right type of snow, that wet snow falls, and they groom it, and it's just perfect.
Why can't I think of the name of the place that is in the Cusp? The guys were a bunch of people were heading with fat bikes. I was recently kind of heading out on the highway, and there was a lot of people with fat bikes heading west. So
that's interesting.
Like past Banff type thing.
Yeah.
So there's clearly a big following still, for sure.
What's your thoughts for the next 5 years? Where's it going?
I think there will always be some options around. I think maybe some of the big players might continue to kind of maybe just keep it as a fringe project. I think depending on how our winters trend and stuff, that we will always have an uptick in people riding their trail bikes in the wintertime. Whether that's just like local in-town laps. Like I just
In Fish Creek.
Yeah, Fish
Edworthy or
Creek
whatever.
for sure. The days of mothballing your mountain bike all winter seem to be behind us.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Like there's lots of wicked riding and the trails change. You know, Fish Creek's super cool in the wintertime because if the creek freezes up and you got routes that you can't normally do. So it's almost like getting a different version of the same area, which is rad. So I don't think winter riding is going anywhere, for sure. I think, you know, I could see a time where it'll maybe be like if we took this poll again in 5 years,
Interesting.
I could see it, depending on the weather we have, I could see it being like a 50-50 split, or I could see it maybe still favoring trail bikes more.
I think it really comes down to the pocket you're into, because we're talking about like how great Fernie is, how good Canmore is, how good Calgary is. But you know, spending time down in the Crow's Nest, like nobody fat bikes down there.
Yeah,
like if I want to go like maintain a trail down there and do laps, like I have to do it.
You have to
like,
do the work.
There's just like not a lot of people doing it.
Yeah.
And so it's like you need almost to have to build a community, because it's not as fun. Like early days when you go out and you're just bushwhacking, you'll deal with it.
Sure.
And once you've had a wickedly groomed trail, and then you go out and you're just getting murdered for an hour.
Well, yeah, you're
like,
just dragging your bike through the forest, which is awesome, but maybe only once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to do it all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny as pockets of like and communities kind of build up and ride more. Like it's maybe it'll change, but yet at the same time, with it being hot, cold, like you could just ride your regular bike. With
You could
a
ride your regular
tire.
bike. I don't know. For me, it comes down to like sometimes I just like to change it up, right? You spend all season hammering away on your mountain bike, and I get to the end, and I'm kind of up for a little different format. So
Totally, yeah.
I guess, you know, not everybody goes that way, but for me, it's kind of a nice,
It's a super nice
just
change,
a change up. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'll probably always have some kind of fat bike in my repertoire.
Totally.
Yeah. So
Nice.
that's all I got.
Yeah,
Fat it out.
I think that's our fat talk for this week.
Glad we got that off our chests.
I was pretty worried about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're going to put up some polls next week for different topics.
See what our next version of this chat looks like.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for tuning in, watching our dumbasses, and
See you next time.
yeah, toodaloo.